What it do, what it do. This is the Brothers on Book podcast where we find great books that will give you real value and actionable steps and have fun in the process. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendation or if you would like to be a guest host for a particular book you have in mind. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. I'm Alex, and with me is my brother, Jack. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and even better since I'm in the fantasy football final, fourth year in a row.
I am not. So today, what book do we have for our listeners today, Jack?
Today, we have a personal finance classic, perhaps considered the godfather of personal finance. That would be Robert Kiyosaki's classic, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so Robert Kiyosaki, he's got a lot of revenue streams. He's got 20 plus books, over 41 million copies worldwide. He's got his podcast, the Rich Dad Radio podcast, or Rich Dad Radio Show, sorry. And he also created a board game called Cash Flow, which kind of gives kids and adults practice with the interactions of income statements and balance sheets. So this is once again, I think it is a classic, and I have read now Cash Flow Quadrant, this one, and his book more recently called Fake. So yeah, what did you think of the book? Your initial thoughts after finishing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess revolutionary would be a word that comes to my mind. It really revolutionized how I thought about finances and really just the mentality I have about money and really what I should be, what I should be doing with my money and how I should be thinking about becoming, I guess, financially independent, or some people would say rich. This is as he says in his podcast, if you listen to it a second time, you'll learn twice as much, where that's probably not true. I would say I feel like this is the second time I read this book, and I felt like I picked up on a lot more reading through it again. How about yourself?
Yeah, I would say, so most people read Rich Dad, Poor Dad before Cash Flow Quadrant. But my introduction to Robert Kiyosaki was through Cash Flow Quadrant a few summers ago. And I remember, sitting by a pool reading this book and really thinking that, man, this, like the way he just breaks it down, I think his real secret is his ability to explain the income statement and balance sheet. And I think he does it a little more in Cash Flow Quadrant. But he gets into the pictures in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I think that's really, his illustrations are what really separates him and his ability to explain that. So it was definitely a mindset changer. I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad is, more of a mindset, more of a getting you thinking about these things and getting you on your way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I sort of felt, I read Rich Dad before I read Cash Flow Quadrant. I thought, Cash Flow Quadrant, I sort of thought just expanded upon what he was saying in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But yeah, it was also a very good book. And I sort of lost my train of thought there. I mean, the one thing I think he does a really good job is taking I guess, ideas and concepts that I think the vast majority of the population thinks are hard to do or complex, and he makes them very, very simple. Almost, I would say it's sometimes too simple, like, come on, it can't possibly be this easy, but who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I guess until you do it.
Yeah. I mean, in his introduction, he kind of talks, and this is kind of a theme throughout the book, but it's like just this like incredible open-mindedness he preaches to constantly be kind of analyzing instead of just criticizing and getting as many points of view. and the change in mindset from basically, and I'm sure this stuck out to you too, but going from, I can't afford this if something's presented to you, to thinking, how can I afford this, or asking yourself that question.
Yeah, that was actually that statement was for me one of the biggest like openers. Like when I first read this and I saw that statement, like never say I can't afford something, say like how can I afford it? Because it's, he's sort of right. And then at the end he talks about just like internally, if you say I can't afford it, he's like that causes sadness. And then he goes on to say that a lot of times if you continually say that to yourself, that can lead to despondency and depression. Where if you say, how can I afford it? Like the change in your mind of like what it makes you think, you start thinking about how you can do things, and you get creative and you open up, your mind to new options and new possibilities. And just, I think in many returns, it just makes you a healthier person.
Yeah, I think right. You start thinking when you ask yourself, how can I afford this? Whereas if you just tell yourself, I can't afford this, your brain kind of shuts off and you go on to your next thought, and you kind of just pass it by. The opportunity or the moment passes you by.
Exactly. I would agree.
So, well, is this a good time to break for our first
ad?
Our first ad? I guess before you do the pickleball ad, maybe publicly, I've heard Julie Foudy has been spouting off that she likes pickleball. And can we take this opportunity to maybe challenge her publicly to
I think this should be a formal challenge to Julie Foudy and whoever she wants to play with, that, the Allwild brothers are coming for her. She may not know this, but we were the bronze medal winners at the Punta Gorda pickleball tournament this last Thanksgiving. So Julie, if you're listening, come at us, girl. So pickleball. Pickleball is the greatest sport you've never heard of. It's the fastest growing leisure sport in the United States. It is a mix between tennis and table tennis. However, don't let the average age of participant in this sport fool you. This game has fierce competition, and only the will of a champion can thrive. Go buy some paddles and balls and play pickleball, the greatest sport you've never heard of. And also, why we're on this topic, I saw last night in one of the basketball games, I saw Boban. I can't pronounce his name, like Marjanovic, or he's a giant center for the Mavs. He's like 7'3". He was talking to, I believe, Craig Sager on the court about playing pickleball as well.
Really?
So this can also be an open challenge to him as well.
Cool.
If Boban, if you're listening, come at us. So I guess, Jack, what was your favorite quote or message from the book?
I guess I actually think I enjoyed more the stuff in the second half of the book. Seemed to be more like mindset things, like what gets in the way of people that maybe are a little bit financially literate, but for whatever reason they're having trouble. And he does, talks a lot about fear and cynicism, laziness, bad habits, arrogance. But I think the message that I like is kind of just like, you just have to take action. And even if you take action and fail, that you will still learn something in the process. And actually, in the tail end of the book, he mentioned that 16% rule book, which is about tax liens, which I had read years ago, and I loved the concept. And I thought, this is so smart, and I've never heard of it, about investing in basically property taxes that hadn't been paid. So you could pay the city, and then that landowner would then owe you instead of the government. But the point I was trying to make is I didn't take any action on that. And that was something I was really excited about, but didn't do anything. So
it's funny you say that, because the first time I read this, I too was also very excited about the tax liens. And I think I talked to you about it.
Yeah.
And then I watched some YouTube videos on it, and then I sort of just, I don't really remember what happened. It just kind of tailed off and I stopped exploring. But yeah, that was something I would also like to look back into and try and do. I guess sort of going on that topic, he brought up this this acronym FOCUS, follow one course until successful. And I guess I just sort of wanted your thoughts on this. And that was talking about the difference between being balanced and being sort of, focused. And I think what he was sort of saying sort of goes very much contrary to what you're always told, is that you should like diversify, your investments, you should diversify. So in case something goes wrong, you don't lose everything. Pretty much you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And sort of the what I'm getting that he's saying is that no, you shouldn't do that. You should. He's saying if you don't have a lot of money, if you want to get rich, you have to focus really on one like asset class or one thing. I guess what do you sort of think on that?
Well, I guess was that the part where he was saying like how he liked the Texan mindset, where like was
yeah,
that,
I mean,
that
it ties into that, but it was, I believe this was later in the book.
I mean, yeah, I guess it, like if you're, if you don't have a lot of money to start with, I mean, you kind of have to be correct, or you kind of have to, toss up a Hail Mary kind of. And I guess
Sure.
to do that, you would need to, prepare a lot and go all in on one thing.
Yeah,
At least a couple
agree.
times.
It is.
Go ahead.
It is just, contrary to what really if you're told is that you should just diversify, but it's sort of different. And I kind of agree with him. But on the same note, I think it sort of takes us back to, uncorrelated risk, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
the
like
Dalio school of thought.
Right. And at what point do you switch from being focused to wanting, a large sample set of investments that are uncorrelated? Would you just say it's at some point of, at some point of wealth or some point in your life?
I mean, I kind of think I actually kind of agree with Dalio on this one. I'm more of like I think you probably should be operating in that mindset the whole time. But I think, Kiyosaki's kind of a lot of times saying like sometimes these things aren't that risky, or you don't really know a deal when you see it, and kind of just I kind of like Dalio's framework where you just go, in on maybe 10 asset classes that are pretty uncorrelated.
Sure.
So I guess we could go back to, so when Kiyosaki's investing, and part of, this whole book, so his real dad, he refers to as his poor dad.
Poor dad, yeah.
Yeah, and his poor dad, I don't know how, I don't know how poor he actually is. I think he led the teachers union of Hawaii, but he had a PhD, right. Kind of living paycheck to paycheck in some way. And then when he says rich dad, he's really referring to his friend Mike, and who did not really go to college.
He dropped out of high school, if I remember correctly.
And it's just kind of contrasting the two mindsets throughout the book. But I guess Kiyosaki, Mike's dad says, it's really not all that hard. You just need to know, the difference between an asset and a liability, and, just buy assets. That's it.
Right. And that's sort of what I was talking about, making things like almost too simple, but he's true. And I guess he says you have to, what is an asset?
Yeah. So I guess that's like his definition. I don't know if I really agree with it, but what did you think of? Okay. So, well, his definition was, I think that basically it puts cash in your pocket.
Yeah. And a liability takes cash out of your pocket.
Yeah. So by this definition, a house for many people, if you're not house hacking,
a primary, I guess a primary residence that you don't house hack would be considered by him a liability, when every other person on the planet would probably consider it an asset.
Yeah. Whereas most people would say, the house is the asset, your mortgage is a liability. Now, I guess I would also say,
oh, that's interesting.
I guess I would also say, because like on your balance sheet, your house would show up on the asset column and the mortgage would show up on the liability column. And as you go over time, hopefully your house appreciates and the mortgage on the right side goes down. So your net worth would go up, hopefully. Now, I mean, and this was kind of with my house in Charlotte that I'm house hacking. The cash flow itself is kind of like negligible. It's like zero basically after all the costs and stuff. But what's not being captured, like it's not really putting cash in my pocket, but I'm basically have zero. But each month that mortgage is getting paid down. So that liability is going down. So my renters are paying for the mortgage, the interest, the taxes, the insurance.
Your renters are paying off the liability.
Right. So my net worth, my net worth is going up.
Right. I think you have to concede that if you have people paying off your liability, that is then an asset, right?
I can't imagine that Kiyosaki would say that's a bad deal.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone would say it's a bad deal.
Yeah.
I would say even how you're from just a primary residence, when you're just saying that the house is an asset and the mortgage is the liability, I have a feeling he would probably still say that since you have to pay taxes on the house, unless you're lumping that into the mortgage, he would probably still consider that a liability, or if you have to do repairs and whatnot. I mean, I'm the same way as you. I consider my house with my renters an asset. I don't think of it as a liability.
Yeah. I mean, I can see like if you just buy a house and, you're paying a ton in interest and ton in insurance that, you might be better off just renting and buying stocks and other assets.
I mean, because he is right. Houses, housing prices don't just always uniformly go up. Like it seems like a lot of people like to think. And, if you've bought a house in probably the past, 5 to 10 years, that's all you would probably know. I know that's really all I know is seeing the value of my house go up. I think probably the same for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess one.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, say what you're going to say.
I mean, I just back to the balance sheet, like, and he kind of says like, the rich focus on their asset column or their balance sheet, whereas most of the other people kind of just focus on their income statements, like how much money are they making at their day job, and that is not really the thing you should be focusing on.
Yeah, he actually, well, sort of going off that, he has, I really enjoy his definition of like wealthy. Mm-hmm. Which is where, income from your assets cover your expenses. And if you can accomplish that, you may not be rich, but you would be wealthy because, you then you really don't have to work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if, was it in this book, but like, I don't know if they were differentiating between the term rich and wealthy. And some guy had a great line that I liked where he says rich is like, just how much money you make, but wealth is measured in time, how long you can stop working.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Have your assets cover. Right.
That's in this book.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really, what everyone should shoot for is to have, not have to work. And that's really what he is, that's really what he's advocating is living your life to be free, right? To do whatever you want to do.
Now, there was one thing that I really liked that he pointed out that I hadn't really thought. Well, I kind of thought of it, but I haven't really put it into practice. And that was he didn't like that, like the typical net worth metric. And he was kind of saying that, if you had to liquidate some of those things now, you'd probably have to sell them at a deep discount, or a lot of things that you're, accounting for in your net worth number, like a retirement fund, for example. So like my 401k, I'm technically not allowed to take any out before age 59 and a half. And if I wanted to take that out, I'd have to pay the taxes on it plus a 10% penalty. So even though I'm counting my whole retirement fund in my net worth number right now, I really should be, it's really lower, because if I wanted to access that cash, I'd have to pay a bunch of taxes and the penalty. But I mean, I have kind of been thinking on how I can get that earlier, this backdoor Roth conversion, but that's in the works. But I did like that he pointed that out.
Do you want to explain what that backdoor Roth is? Because I know you told it to me, but I don't really remember it.
So I've kind of been trying to get access to more cash earlier on. And, the fact I would have to wait to 59 and a half kind of bothered me. So what I kind of explored ideas on how to get access to all my 401k money without paying that 10% penalty. And one way is, after you leave a job, you are allowed to move an employer 401k into an IRA. So you would be able to basically, move it to an individual retirement account. And then slowly you could convert that into a Roth IRA, where you pay the taxes now and then it accumulates tax-free. And as long as you wait 5 years from when you convert it to the Roth IRA, it sounds like you can access the principal to that penalty-free. So
the benefit of that would then be, you pay the tax instead of like a 401k where you pay no pre-taxes and then pay the post-tax. In this, you would then pay the taxes up front. So you should be paying taxes on less money, right?
So, well, actually there is what is called a Roth 401k also, where you pay taxes now and then it accumulates without getting taxed. But but basically you would be choosing to pay the taxes now and slowly convert it into this Roth IRA, where you're paying the taxes now and then the growth is tax-free. And the benefit, once again, is that after 5 years, you would have access to that money without paying the 10% penalty that you would pay if you wanted to access the 401k now.
Okay.
So
I like it.
Yeah.
I guess while we're on the subject of taxes, Kiyosaki has, an opinion on taxes, and it appears that he doesn't like it. And it seems like, a lot of what he talks about is how to sort of get around, legally, of course, not paying taxes. And he talks about this through what corporations are. And I guess, even before I read this book, I knew, on personal, your personal income tax, I knew you pay taxes first on like the gross, but a corporation, I knew you pay taxes on the net.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand. To me, that didn't really seem like a big deal when I first knew it, until I read this book and sort of listening to what he was doing through his, I guess you could say, corporation. And I put that word in air quotes for those that are listening. You really understand how you can get away with not paying as much, or just using more of your money. And some of the examples he gives are, if you have a corporation, you can, call, say, going to the gym, you can buy your gym membership on your corporation. You can buy a car. Right. You can have a board, he says, a board meeting in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And all this can, instead of being post-tax money, this can be pre-tax money. And that can, really add up in the long run.
Right. And he also goes through a lot of the history, like there were no income taxes, or really no taxes originally. One of the reasons the U.S. broke away from Britain was the Boston Tea Party, right?
Tea Party, right.
Where they were trying to tax us.
Right.
So, it's 1913.
13. Yeah.
Yeah, we the U.S.
Amendment, right?
16th Amendment. So
16th,
we
yeah.
introduced the
Federal
income tax.
And it was originally, this is sort of, the kicker was it was originally only for the ultra rich.
Right.
And then, of course, now it's trickled down and everyone pays taxes.
Right.
And this sort of then goes back into, I listen, I don't know if you've listened to him a little bit, but Peter Schiff talks about this a lot, how people that, advocate for higher like tax rates, they really are looking at the wrong figure. And the figure is they should be looking at is tax revenue. Because even if you're advocating for a higher tax rate, if you're just going to say you're going to, tax the ultra rich at a huge rate, they're just not going to pay it. And Kiyosaki talks about this a lot too. You're just going to shelter the money, or you're going to do things with these corporations. But
right, he's talking about how the rich get savvier and find the
loopholes through the tax code,
loopholes or incentive structure of the tax code.
Probably because it comes back to the fact that they have the money and the resources to hire lawyers and accountants to do it. So I guess the argument goes back to, would a lot of people rather have an art, like a sort of a high rate just to make everyone feel good that people, I guess, are paying their fair share, or would they rather have a higher revenue where the government actually gets the money? Just, interesting food for thought.
Basically, it is interesting to think about this. Like for income tax, with some of the rates, he was saying average Americans work about 4 to 5 of the months for the government just to, cover their taxes. And, you're paying Social Security. I actually didn't even know this, but the way the Social Security is, or basically the part that your employer contributes to Social Security goes to your gross income, which you get taxed on for your income tax. I did not know that. So basically you're getting taxed on more money than you actually are making, or basically it's money that you're not getting directly. That's directly going to Social Security. I guess we kind of like real estate. He does talk about the 1031 exchange a good amount.
So I'm all for it. I recently read, I don't know if this is true or if this is going to happen. I recently read that Biden was looking to get rid of the 1031 exchange.
Really? Dang.
But I guess for those of you that don't know, a 1031 exchange is where when you sell a piece of real estate, you can, I guess, roll all of that money, all the capital gains that you got tax-free into a more expensive piece of real estate. So if you bought a house for $100,000 and then you sold it for $200,000, your capital gains would be $100,000, the difference between 200 and 100. And then instead of paying capital gains taxes, you could just roll that money directly into the purchase of another real estate property. And that is different than like in the stock market, where if you were to sell a stock, you immediately have to pay the capital gains tax. This sort of goes back to what you were saying about your net worth is less, right? Because if you were to sell out of the stock market, you have to pay taxes on all that money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where you can exchange up real estate.
Yeah.
And he does give a lot of good examples about how you can use this starting small, like starting with a small single family unit or house. If you get some appreciation, you can then roll all that appreciation into, a larger house or a multifamily or something. And then you can just keep doing this, and you can keep, sort of rolling up until you're at, small apartment complexes. I would say it's a very powerful vehicle to build wealth. I guess, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's like a total game changer. In some ways it made me, I hadn't thought of it in a while. And kind of was thinking maybe I should do something like that with some of my houses. Maybe it is time to like try to move up. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully Biden doesn't get rid of that.
Yeah, I mean, this I think goes back exactly to would you rather have a higher rate or a higher revenue? Because I think, it's impossible to say what would happen, but I think probably people would stop selling as much, right? If you couldn't exchange, if you had to pay the taxes, people wouldn't be as eager to sell.
Right.
That would have some other consequences that I'm sure aren't looked at.
Yeah, demand for real estate would definitely go down.
Right.
Yeah. So, so what else? What else should we talk about?
I mean, I guess this is. I find that this is an incredibly quotable book.
Yeah.
Just some great quotes. So, what do you think about the quote? Savers are losers.
I mean, I've listened to him say this a lot on the podcast. The podcast is pretty good. He's got, a wide array of people that come on, and they oftentimes, at least recently, talk about all the money printing that goes on that, is devaluing the purchasing power of the United States dollar. So basically putting your money in anything other than cash is good.
I don't know. I mean, I think in the American market, that's probably true. I don't think he would advocate to go put your money in a worse currency.
Oh,
but
right.
Yeah. But you're right. I think what he's saying is that don't just keep your money as cash in the bank, because you just lose buying power, which I for the most part agree with.
Yeah, and that's why he's such an advocate for gold, silver, and now Bitcoin also.
Right.
So
his podcast is very entertaining. He oftentimes gets into almost arguments with his guests, which is something I don't really hear from a lot of other podcast hosts.
I mean, I do like so I'm looking through my notes on chapter 5, and the name of the chapter is The Rich Invent Money. And he's kind of talking about how just like, financial intelligence is just simply having more options, and that, one's greatest asset is their mind. And yeah, it's kind of a mindset chapter. He kind of talks about winning, and winners are just not afraid of losing. And he kind of talks about these 3 main skills that he thinks are needed. And so 1 is find an opportunity that everyone else missed. 2 is raise money. And 3 is organize smart people. So I guess, I mean, find an opportunity that everyone else missed. What do you what comes to your mind, I guess?
I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is sort of, it takes like hustling. I mean, recently I've been, just going on Craigslist, emailing people, asking for houses. I asked some people that were, looking to rent if they were interested in buying, and nothing really came of that. But I did, I did talk for about 30 minutes with a major, I guess, real estate guy from Bay City. I mean, he's major for Bay City. I mean, I don't really know how big he is, but he told me he at one point owned most of Midland Street. So that's pretty big.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's always good to meet connections, and I'm actually talking to a wholesaler tomorrow. Just trying to find more houses to buy, or, some type of deal. And yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, you can get deals off the MLS, but I think a lot of times you get the better deals off market. And he sort of talks about you make the statement of like, you make the money when you buy, not when you sell, I think is true for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to also just like studying a lot and getting comfortable with how certain assets move and how they're valued.
Right.
So, I mean, if someone brought you some numbers on a real estate house, you kind of have a framework of how you would go about valuing it, and how much cash flow you think you would get now versus maybe in a few years what it would be, or is there anything changing in the market, or so.
I mean, so when, in that chapter, I think that was the chapter he was sort of, I would be interested to get your opinion on this because you sort of did this. He was talking about getting land contracts for houses.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know, a land contract is where you as the buyer usually don't go through a bank. You just a lot of times put down a down payment, and then you pay the owner of the house a fixed amount until the house is paid off to them, as they're a lot of times paying off the mortgage if they haven't. So he was talking. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, so he was talking a lot about land contracts, and this is something I thought about because he was saying he was doing land contracts for 0% down, and then just I think it was a 10% interest rate. And the thing I was always worried about that is he then talks about how he doesn't have to worry about the house, like they're just essentially paying him rent, but he still owns it until they pay it off, but he then doesn't have to do any of the repairs. And the thing I was always sort of worried about is when I was thinking about this was, what stops the person from, let's say you do a 0%, down land contract, and all of a sudden the house needs a new roof, and a new roof costs like, 10% of what they paid her, and they've only been in the house for like 6 months. Like, what's to stop them? You have to be a little worried about that the person will just, walk away.
Yeah, that's a real risk.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is because he was basically, he was kind of like the middleman. He bought it and then sold it, right?
sold it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a seller, yeah, it's a real, I mean, you're basically a bank. Think about it. Yeah. If a buyer or, a homeowner doesn't make their payments to the bank will foreclose on them, right? So
Right.
if you stop making your payments to a seller financed house, the former owner would take back possession. But you're right, that's a real risk, and a lot of people don't even want to have to deal with that, so they don't even bother. If you come to them and ask, can I do like a seller finance, deal, and some will just say no.
So, I mean, I guess it may be a little different for you, but when you were buying your Michigan homes, did you ever think about, I mean, I think they were all sort of lumped into one payment, right?
Yeah, so I found these through a property manager. He knew a couple that was going through a divorce and had to sell them, and so I got 3 houses in one. Now, yeah, I was having problems getting traditional financing through these banks because I had never really done a deal, but I got the former owners to agree to finance them for me. I did pay them a higher interest rate. I was paying 6%. Just to compare, I think I was paying like 3.1% on my home in North Carolina at the time. So it was a good chunk higher, but that was the difference between me getting the deal and not getting the deal. And I thought it was still a good deal, so I did it anyway.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is, would you have considered just letting, if they wouldn't have been linked together, would you have been considered just letting one of the houses go?
I don't think so. I think, yeah, just in terms of, I mean, they were all good. I mean, I guess I might have had different feelings if, like, one of the rent or one of the houses just like never paid or something. I don't know. And I quite frankly don't even know how that would have worked if I would have maybe, yeah, because it was all lumped into one. I don't know how I would have even, I wouldn't have wanted to lose all 3. So. yeah, definitely a real risk. So let's see here. So what do you think about, so chapter 6 is work to learn, don't work for money. And this, he kind of harps on, his rich dad is kind of saying, sorry, like job security meant everything to Robert's educated dad, whereas learning meant everything to his rich dad. What do you think?
I think that's actually something that really resonated with me. He then goes in to talk about I think he at some point starts talking about like specialization, right?
Yeah.
And he starts saying like, if you're really specialized, you better have a union.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's something that sort of resonates with me, being that, my skills or my eventual skills when I'm out of school, really, for the most part, will only be applicable in very narrow fields, or at least what I was trained to do. I mean, but yeah, that's sort of what he was saying. Like, I think what I'm trained to do would be very applicable in, very narrow fields. But I think me as a person, I think I could sort of flow into other fields just, and learn new skills. So yeah, so I sort of think it's always very important to continue to learn. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I like sort of doing this and reading all these books, is because you learn new skills and you get new opinions.
Yeah, I think one like super ironic thing when they say like generalist over specialist, that there was it might have been on Rich Dad. But we were listening to it, I think a couple of weeks ago, me and you, and this guy brought up the fact that because our currency is getting devalued, that it doesn't even really give an opportunity for people to specialize, because not only do you need to know your day job or whatever, but you need to know how to be able to invest your extra to, beat this devaluing process. So you like almost by default have to be a generalist, and people are almost fighting that momentum. Like we're not even given the chance to just be specialists anymore. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was on the Investors podcast.
The Investors podcast. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely true. Like I was having this conversation a while back, like, you feel like you have to constantly outperform, or at least I feel like I have to constantly outperform the devaluation of what I'm earning, where in reality, I just sort of wish I honestly could just stick my money in the bank and allow it to grow, at a moderate rate for me. But instead, I feel like I have to do all this other stuff to try and make it grow, which is, sort of stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. Robert had an interesting background. I mean, he'd spent time in like the Marine Corps Air Force.
No, he was a Marine, I think.
What was he? Okay.
I think he was.
But he flew, right?
He flew. Yeah. I think he flew for the Marines.
That's what it was. And his rich dad was basically saying, use this as an opportunity to learn international trade. And so he did that for a while, and then he realized his sales skills were kind of crummy. So then he went out of his way to search for a company that had a good sales program, and he found Xerox, and he said that kind of groomed him into being a salesman. So he actively sought out roles where he would learn a specific skill, which kind of goes back to that, learning over earning mentality that he had.
Yeah, that goes back to, if you remember from our second episode, the 50th law. 50 Cent said the same thing. He said, if it's between taking a role where you get paid more, but you have less flexibility and less potential, right, to do, you should always take the role with more responsibility so you can grow yourself as a person. Which I thought, I think it's probably safe to say that 50 Cent and Robert Kiyosaki had different upbringing. So it's interesting to see that they both sort of came to the same conclusion, which is nice. I think this is the same chapter. He was talking about something that I had written down, is that so many people are one skill away from being rich.
Mm-hmm.
And like the skills here talking, I think the skills he's talking about are sales, marketing, accounting, and then just knowing the law.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells this sort of like interesting anecdote where this he's in Korea and this woman is, interviewing him for a local newspaper, and she's saying she's like trying to be a novelist, and he's like, well, your writing's very good, like, why do you think you haven't succeeded? And she's like, I don't know, it just seems like my books never take traction. And he goes, maybe you should take a sales course, like maybe you should take a class in how to sell your books better. And this like wildly offended the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly defensive. It's like, how could you say that? I'm professional. I would never stoop to selling. And then all Robert does is, he points to the book that they're talking about and it says best-selling author. He's like, what's this say? And she's like, it says best-selling author. He's like, it doesn't say best writing author, does it? And it kind of just ends with that. The point being, like, just being incredibly proficient at whatever skill you're doing isn't enough. You have to be able to sell it or market it. And what he's saying is, if you can take whatever like skill you have or like whatever you're doing, and then you become an incredibly good seller, that you'll become very successful in that. But so many people don't take the time to build up their sales skills or their marketing skills. And I think in this regard, to a lesser extent, accounting and like sort of law, that they don't really ever succeed to the level that they could have.
Yeah, and I guess it kind of goes back to it takes a very like strong person to go against the grain. Like, I mean, a lot of, our culture is saying, just keep going with what you're doing. You're making a good living now. Just keep working at what you're doing and I guess specializing to some extent. Whereas I guess to get that one skill away, you might be better off, even if you take less money in the short run, building some other skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's somewhat ironic that the two of us are saying not really, or not necessarily don't specialize, but we're both, relatively specialized.
Yeah.
So I guess it's somewhat ironic coming from us saying that you should be a generalist.
But we're trying, right? We're running, we're doing this podcast.
We are definitely, I definitely feel like we are trying.
Because I mean, he talks about, I mean, the main management skills needed for success are like, management over your cash flow, management over your systems, management over your people. And like, so, I mean, everyone makes, everyone could do this just, in their own life. Like, whatever you have extra each month, you're in charge of, how do you allocate your extra cash? What are you putting it into? What assets are you creating? So, and also, I guess, building these types of systems to make it easier for you, and also working with smarter people, hopefully to show you what you need to know and what you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, then, the last one, the management of people. I mean, I remember, I will say, like, when I was sort of in college, I sort of thought like, I was like, why would you take a class in sales or marketing? I'm like, I kind of thought it was like just sort of like lower. I just sort of figured like anyone can do it. Like, I didn't understand the point. But now I'm like, yeah, those are honestly probably the most important skills to have, the sales and marketing.
I mean, we kind of get a crash course, like in trying to run our rooms to some extent, because I mean, we gotta, we have to take the good pictures. We have to write descriptions. We have to talk to people and get them interested if they're not, or if they're on the fence. So we're kind of learning some things at least.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was trying to say is the management of people. That was another thing that I thought like, oh, that can't, I remember, I think mom or dad complaining about like how much someone that was running a hospital was making,
Mhm.
but they weren't a doctor. And I was just like, yeah, it just sounds like, a manager, like anyone can do it. And I have to say, after now, like dealing with a lot of people that manage, I guess, allegedly manage people, not everyone can do it. And it is very difficult to, honestly, to do that, to manage people, I think.
Right. You got to figure out what motivates them. What are their drivers? What do they react well to? What do they get super irritated with?
Right.
There's all these little nuances.
Who doesn't work well with who works well with who, who can't. Yeah.
Yeah. And how to deal with conflict. Yeah. Yeah. When you have to bring something up.
Well, you have anything else that really stuck out to you?
I mean, chapter 7 was like overcoming obstacles. I mean, it was more just these human features that are kind of detractors. We got fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, arrogance. I mean, the only thing I really took from that, well, I like the quote, "It often takes great courage to not let rumors and talk of doom and gloom affect your doubts and fears." And that was kind of like, if you analyze a deal and then, you got all your friends saying, "Oh, dude, why would you do that? It's so risky." Or like, everyone, it's like free to give your opinion. And there's a lot of like, chicken littles, like, the sky is falling type of people. You got to be careful who you're like listening to. And then I also kind of like just the message of choose to analyze something. Don't just criticize it. Yeah.
Cynics criticize and winners analyze.
Yes, exactly.
That's the quote I have.
And I did like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say another like sentiment from that chapter that I had written down was the human spirit can do anything, which was something I liked.
Cool. Let's see. Chapter 8 was getting started. Okay, I did like some of these. This is where he's kind of giving like 10 steps towards or like to awaken one's what he's calling financial genius. And I mean, a lot of books talk about this, but like you need to have like a really strong why. Like, why are you doing this? Or like a greater power or spirit or purpose. And like, a reason, is it basically a combination of wants and don't wants? Like, so I mean, I guess when I was thinking like, I want like control over my life. I mean, we just spent last week playing pickleball every morning. Like how cool would that be if we could do that every morning?
I would love it.
So that could be our, our why.
That literally is my why. I went and played some morning and I'm like, man, I need to buy an apartment complex so I can just do this every day.
Yeah.
Pay someone to manage it.
I kind of liked his message on, master a formula and then like move quickly, like just the power of learning quickly. What else? I mean, and also, this message, this number 5 was pay yourself first.
Right.
And that kind of, I mean, he even talked about richest man in Babylon, where he says, a part of all you earn is yours to keep.
Right.
And I think I even struggled with this now. Well, I left my job, a couple months ago, and I actually did sell some stock to just give me more of a buffer and to like pay bills and stuff. And he was kind of preaching like, instead of using any sort of savings or asset to pay for bills, you really should be trying to think creatively to set up some asset that could pay it for you. So I felt a little bad after I read that, but
yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, he then sort of goes into if you do that, and you don't have anything to pay your bills, that just motivates you
Right.
to at least go get it. You have to go get another job now, like, because you can't not pay your bills.
Right. Yeah. But yeah,
So,
pay yourself first. I always thought that sounded easy, but I didn't really do it this time. So,
right.
um, I liked his, pay your brokers well, the power of good advice, surround yourself with great people, and
Right.
hopefully they'll pay off in spades. I did really like when he brought up the fact that many poor people don't have a problem tipping restaurants 15 to 20%, but they have a problem paying like a real estate broker to sell their house for like 3 or 7%.
Right. That was
And
that was honestly something I would have said too. But then once he said that, I'm like, yeah, he's probably right. On the same note, I don't, I would say, real estate agents are one of those things. I would say my real estate agent, I'll give him a shout out here, Robert Murphy in the Nashville area, was exceptional. He was exceptional to work with, and he did a great job. But I worked with probably three other real estate agents before him who I thought were all like terrible. So I guess to an extent, he's right. The ones that are good should be paid well, but there are a lot out there that are not good. I mean, I just felt like they just showed up. They had no idea. I mean, I felt like just me looking at Zillow and Realtor and like looking at, rents and, comparable sales, I had a better idea of what these houses were worth than they did. So yeah, there are a lot of good real estate agents, and I think there are a lot of bad real estate agents.
another good piece of advice I thought he brought up is when he interviews any like paid professional, and this would be like for an accountant or I guess real estate agent or attorney, he often asks them how much property or stocks do they personally own, and then what percentage they pay in taxes, to see how savvy they are themselves, and are they like practicing what they're preaching, and I mean, do they bring any cool ideas to the table? So I thought that was a good piece of advice. This was also a good one. Number 7 was be an Indian giver. The power of getting something for nothing. Now, so here's a quote: wise investors must look at more than ROI. They look at the assets that they get for free once they get their money back. Now, I immediately thought of the Burr strategy in real estate. I don't know what you thought of first, but that's what I thought of, and that's this concept where you buy some real estate, you rehab it, you rent it out, you refinance it, and then you repeat it. So you kind of take out the cash that you started with, hopefully, and then you're left with a hopefully cash flowing rental property
that is appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's also kind of, and I've started like writing these journals that it maybe takes me 10, 15 hours to set up. I pay $60 to some, cover designer, and then I put them up on Amazon. And then, once I get that $60 back, I'm left with, I guess the future stream of those book sales. So I guess, yeah, don't just look at ROI, I guess, but also look at maybe like an IRR, a longer term vision, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I thought of would have been something else he talked about in the book was, I guess, 0% down, buying a house with 0% down. Okay. That is immediately, you're immediately cash flowing and you've put no money into it. So that is sort of, yeah, I mean, you're essentially getting the house. You have tenants. The tenants are then literally buying you the house. You have no money into it, and you're cash flowing. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, your journal, I think is a good example. You do all the upfront work, and then you just sort of reap the benefits of the cash flow. I guess any type of any type of system, like any type of program or course or a study guide that you can do all the upfront work for and buy or build, and then you just sell it, would sort of fall into this category.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, that's sort of what I thought.
Yeah, the next one was use assets to buy luxuries, the power of focus. And I mean, he kind of harps on this. He kind of says, like, poor people and middle class, like, they buy luxuries early on because they take out a mortgage, they take out loans to, finance their nice cars or whatever. But a lot of the rich, they kind of have this discipline. Yeah, they have a discipline where they hold off until they set up assets that are actually cash flowing, and then they use that cash flow to buy their luxury products.
Delayed gratification. I think that's it's in a lot of, I think, psychological studies where you can show that people that have delayed gratification have a disproportionate chance of being ultra successful. I think Dad always tells that story about, I don't remember what it was, but like you opted to get like a toy and an ice cream instead of just like an ice cream. Do you remember?
It's like the marshmallow test they do on kids, but same idea. Yeah. And I guess, did you have anything else from that chapter?
I mean, I guess not really.
So well, I guess the final chapter, they kind of just talked about, just taking action, and like, if you still want more, here are some to-dos. He mentions that, just taking classes, read 10 seminars. Did you have any thoughts on that chapter?
On chapter 9? No, it was, I thought chapter 9 and 10 kind of just sort of blurred together. I mean, the final thoughts that I had sort of from his chapter 10 was, the key to becoming wealthy is the ability to convert earned income into passive income as quickly as possible. And I thought that is honestly I think that's really what should be the biggest takeaway of the book.
Yeah.
Is that, using your income from your job to build like a small business of passive income for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he talks about either like portfolio income, which would be like stocks, bonds, or like, passive income, like more like real estate stuff.
Or small businesses.
Yeah. So I guess after you read this, is there anything like on your to-do list that you want to do now, or like anything differently that immediately comes to mind, or that's on like your to-do list?
Well, I don't know. The thing, I mean, I started my to-do list is I was a Bigger Pockets episode where they said something about like you should make 90-day goals. Mm-hmm. So my 90-day goals for the next 90 days is I want to buy another house in 90 days. So I'm meeting with I was emailing some people on Craigslist in Bay City, and then I started doing it in Nashville, and I'm meeting with a wholesaler tomorrow to go over or to just discuss like what I'm looking for and what he has. So I guess that is, sort of top of the line on my to-do list. What about yourself?
So I was interested in going to a seminar this past year. COVID kind of ruined that, but he said he tries to attend 2 seminars a year at least. So I think for 2021, I definitely want to. I don't know which ones I'm gonna probably like FinCon. I think it's in Austin. For 2021, but I'll look into that, and maybe some other either personal finance or maybe a Bitcoin one. Not sure, but I maybe do a couple of seminars. I do want to get more exposure to like accountants and lawyers, just asking them questions on how to set things up and maybe be a little more tax efficient. And yeah, the stuff about the tax liens,
Tax
I know
liens.
I know I can't do it in North Carolina, but I think I would like to experiment a little. I know South Carolina still does them, so
I know we do them. I know we do them here because I did talk. I know they were put on hold. I think this is why I stopped looking at it because they were put on hold for COVID. I talked my ex roommate who was the attorney for the city was telling me that they should be started up again. But yeah, that was something else that I would be interested in doing.
yeah, I'll always yeah. Another house would be good too.
Yeah.
So, do you wanna take us out?
Yeah.
Or you got
So
anything else?
I think this has been a good episode. I enjoyed the book. I enjoy most of his books that I've read. And you have any final thoughts?
I would say it's a really great book if you're just want some motivation and want some ideas to tinker around with or experiment with. And yeah, I mean I will say I think I like Cash Flow Quadrant a little bit more, but yeah, it's basically an extension from this book.
I think Cash Flow Quadrant, I think, is a little more advanced.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
he even says that. Yeah, well, I guess with that said, this has been a great episode. As always, Jack, it's great seeing you.
Good to see you.
We are the Brothers on Books podcast. Please reach out to us at brothersonbooks@gmail.com for any book recommendations, or if you would like to be a guest host for a particular book. A great review or rating on whichever platform you're listening to would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, if you can think of any friend, family member, or coworker that might like this episode, please pass it along. And with that said, our next episode is going to be a little different, but it should still be very invigorating. It is the book Black Flags, Blue Waters, The Epic History of America's Most Notorious Pirates. And with that, I will say, Jack, Avito say.
Take it easy out.
See ya.